it was too late by the time they got into it, where they both looked at each other and went, "You know what? I don't want an open relationship."
Yeah, this is a unique polycule.
A very unique molecule.
Welcome to Casuals of Runeterra, episode 116. I'm your host, Ryan, here with your other host, Edge.
Hey, what's up? Ready to do more deep diving into one of my favorite characters. Let's go.
Yeah. So we're back with more comics. So as we mentioned in previous episodes, Varus has two comics related to his bio and the story that follows the bio. So this format's a little bit adjusted for that. And in addition, we mentioned how weird the timelines are, and we'll speak about that in a second. But first, as always, we got to do housekeeping. It's at the top. You can listen to us everywhere. Visit us at Podcast Core. Remember, that's COR.com for all of our info. Email us at podcastcore@gmail.com. And then follow us on all the platforms because that helps us with discoverability and we appreciate it. Leave a like and a comment. We love to hear from you. But the easiest way is to tell a friend to take control of their life by listening to the Casuals of Runeterra podcast.
Yeah, that's right. It's your body. Don't let two other spirits in. Just there are two wolves inside of me. No, it's my body. All right?
Inside every man,
I'm taking charge. There are no wolves here. I'm taking charge.
So we're talking about specifically the comic Retribution. So Heartlight was the first one. Retribution is the next one. And this actually takes place before the story. So in the next episode, we'll talk about that. But it's also a weird situation. We'll elaborate on how it's kind of a retcon, but it still fits into the narrative based on how we think it works. So this is not, what we're going to tell you is not official, but we think it works a certain way.
We joke a lot that whatever we say here is canon.
Yeah.
And thanks to you listening, you're on the ground floor of making that true, you know? Like you share it with enough friends and then it can be canon, all right? But
it's called the Mandela effect.
Yeah. But the real truth is that we're not Riot employees. Like we're not writing this stuff. We just have, like, this is content that we love. We love to share it with you. And this is kind of our thoughts on it. As far as like when we get into that part of the discussion, like the retconny bit, but yeah, we'll get there. We'll get there.
Yeah. So for this comic, some more disclaimers. While reading this comic, if you go check it out, which you should, the art's fantastic. The way they represent it, since we now have three, we're picking up where we left off with the last episode. We have three spirits, one physical body. We have Varus, and for Varus, they represent him with black and purple bubble text. For Val, he's represented with a yellow outline of the bubble text. And for Kai is red.
Yeah.
A red outline. Now, I understand what they try to do here. And it's still confusing, right? I just don't know why they didn't either make the bubbles completely different, because there's other characters in this story as well. So you have them having their conversations, then other people enter and have bubbles, and those are just your standard speech bubbles. Yeah, it took me a while and some rereads to really understand what was going on.
I agree with that too, because like like when they do Varus's outline, a lot of times his speech bubbles are actually like backdropped in black. So like Varus is probably like the easiest character in this comic to follow what he's saying. Where I feel like the others, like for Kai and Val, instead of just doing the outline, they could have done like changing the backdrop of their speech bubbles, and then just, you know, your other characters just being white. With black on white. So it definitely is very confusing to follow this.
And for some, that red may be brown. By the way, colorblind exists, so that red outline may appear brown to you. That's still confusing.
It's a lot of interesting choices. This is where we also kind of like disagree on something here. I don't like the art of this comic.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
I do like the story, and I do enjoy it as far as like the color palette
Mhm,
of it, because like if I am just kind of looking at a panel at a glance, like
mhm.
the colors flow beautifully. I can recognize that. As far as trying to follow the story and figure
Yeah,
out what's going on, the art style doesn't work for it, I don't think. So I did not enjoy the art for this comic.
understandable,
Um,
and this is something that from manga, one stylistic thing you can see, and obviously in American comics as well, this artist takes a painterly style to this, but they take a very abstract approach the whole time to structuring panels. So it's very difficult to have a baseline of how to read what's happening. And in manga, that the artist, the mangaka will tend to take those risks. They still have a baseline they establish first of, hey, here's what you know is familiar. I'm gonna switch it up a bit. Like Chainsaw Man does this a good bit. But when he does it,
Chainsaw Man is
yeah, you
the
have a
like the
reference
pinnacle.
point. Yeah, you have a reference point of, oh, I know how mangas are usually paneled, and now he does something cool for this specific scene, and he goes back to what's familiar. This never does that. This maintains a stylistic approach, and unfortunately, you can't completely sacrifice structure just for the artistic aspect because it makes it difficult to consume the content.
Yeah, and this is one of those things of like I'm probably going to be in the minority. Like we always suggest to go and read these because they are stories that we enjoy. And this is one that I would definitely go to say read, because the stylistic choice of the way that the panels are structured and the way the art works might be something that you do really like. Because I do imagine that this like if I were to look at a lot of these panels without speech bubbles, right? Like I think that I would probably enjoy them a lot more that way, to be honest.
Yeah.
But otherwise, like it's just this one, the art style, it's not for me. But the story is really good, and it goes together with a overall story that I do really like. So I'm still gonna consume it, and I'm still
Yeah.
gonna go tell you to read it because it's great. Like the story as a whole is wonderful, and this is a part of it.
Yeah, it's not the end all be all. But let's run through the story. It's not very long, like most comics. So we're just gonna go ahead and talk about some stuff. A little more recap. Remember, Varus is the darkened slash ascended. Val is the archer whose family they were visiting in Palace, and then Kai is the swordsman, who was fatally injured and pretty much led to this upcoming situation. So we start off with, like we said, literally where we left off, with Varus emerging from the well, and he's now controlling the physical body, right? He's using Val's grief because Val is the one who wasn't injured. So that's actually the body he used the most of. That's the sacrifice that was given. And he used the grief and hatred along with that to gain control of this body. And now he's using it against Noxons. And the Kai portion of the spirit, because remember, Kai's technically dead, but his spirit is a part of this shenanigans, is the only one pushing back against this killing spree. And he's begging not only Varys, who could care less, he's a demon, to stop, but he's begging Val to stop falling for his ideology and this sense of justice, because he's falling into the monstrous plan that Varys has. And Varys is using the Noxians and what they did as a pawn to push this justification because it gives him more control of the body. I know it's a lot,
No.
but
It,
we had two other
it,
episodes to get you to this point.
Yes, it is a lot, but if you have been following along with us this whole time, first of all, thank you. But secondly, you'll understand that as far as like Varys using Valmir's or Val's grief
Mhm.
to fuel the power, as far like his own power, as well as to maintain control of the body, it makes sense. Varys ascended because of his need for vengeance and violence,
Yeah,
right? So it's very easy to be like, hey, like the grief that you're experiencing for the loss of Kai is exactly what I felt when I was like, millennia ago in the temple in Shurima, killing a bunch of void monsters and Acathians because they destroyed my home,
yeah.
and I chose to stay at the temple instead. So he's like, yeah, I know exactly what you're feeling, Val. feed into it, buddy. Yeah, let's go ahead and go on a killing spree together. And so it makes sense that that does fuel Varus and allows him to maintain control of the physical form.
Yeah, so we get this first. Remember, the well is during is or the well event happens during this Noxian invasion, and it doesn't stop. I mean, it's still happening as Varys emerges. So when he comes out, he gets to action, right? He starts fighting some Noxians, and we do get a sense of, or we get some appearances for some blood mages here, which is interesting because one thing you'll notice is remember how long Varys was imprisoned, right? So there's a lot about this world, him coming back into full consciousness, that he's not aware of. So when he sees these blood mages, like a bunch of them, he's like, what the fuck? He's kind of confused himself, but he doesn't care. He gets to kill. He's getting back into the swing of things, and he has Val in his corner, and Kai during this whole time is still just disagreeing.
Yeah, and we do get like a nice little thing here as far as in one of the panels when Varus is kind of like blood mages. What the fuck? He does actually say that it's like blood magic. We gave that to you.
Mhm.
So they're like, and this is a call out to our boy Vlad. And if you've listened to the Vladimir episode, this kind of paints a bigger picture of like all these events, even though like the Ascended originate from Sharima, that there is kind of an organization in the background, which is part of the picture that we have, partially painted for us thanks to characters like LeBlanc and the Black Rose organization. So now we know that the Ascended know about that crap. Like it's like, yeah, no, they weren't hiding from us. We know. And I do love that it's like, yeah, no, we gave you that. And also, a lot of better blood mages have attacked me. So needless to say, these Noxian blood mages, they're gonna be okay, right? No.
Yeah, it's don't worry. They'll be fine in hell.
In hell.
So this takes us to our next part of our story because we like to break these into 3 parts. And Varys is leaving the tower in Palace and runs into Val's mom. So there's some stuff that happens in between there, but this is the big moment because the mother immediately can see what's happening. She's aware that Varys existed. She knows the whole Darken stories, etc. Because the tower is there and he's imprisoned there for a reason. So hopefully the elders and diplomats and people know about it, right? You wouldn't want to just keep that a secret. And she also is aware that Val is trapped within this monster now. And Varys, like she understands her son's trapped within the form. She begins to kind of beg Varys to let Kai go as far as not like the spirit sense of let them free, right? Don't do this. And Varys kind of tells her that Val is no more. Don't worry about that. And Varys is doing what Val wants. Like Val's on board with them taking, like, how can you stand here begging me while Noxians are attacking? I'm going to kill them for you. Val wants me to kill them for you. Like, what's the problem, Mom? Wink, wink, nod, nod. And then Varys decides to leave town and seek out as many mortals as possible to slaughter within the confines of this motive he has.
And like between the conversation of Varys with Val's mom, as well as the lead up to when Varys actually runs into Mom, like we get a lot of back and forth between Val and Kai at this point. And it's very like that back and forth, especially with the conversation with Mom. Like that back and forth is really when you start seeing the internal struggle of Varys, right? Like this is the only time where Varys is, or I say the only time, this is the first time in the comic that we're actually seeing Varys kind of struggling with the two of them, right? Because we have Val and Kai, now they're actually kind of communicating with each other instead of Val just being like, die, you Noxian dogs. So like now they're kind of, they're interacting and they're reminding each other like just how much they mean to each other, and then it's that whole storyline of love saves all. So it's that conversation, that inner monologue that Varus is fighting with, combined with running into mom, and mom also pouring more love into it of like just let their spirits go, and then their spirits are resonating because it's like, oh yeah, I love mom,
Yeah.
you know, and like we're not that close to it again, but you know, we're recording this, you know, after Mother's Day it happened. So happy Mother's Day, everybody. Here's your Mother's Day story. Like, you know, like 2 months late.
So, as Hetch mentioned, this incident's happening, and what this is a consistent thing. If you've listened to the previous episodes, where the reason there's so much of a view on the internal conflicts is because that's the majority of the story, right? Is these three souls trapped in one body, going through different things, and what does this body existing mean in the future, right? And that continues until there's a conflict. It's kind of a loop. Like there's things where Varys can kill to kind of distract not only the spirits but himself, right, with the thing he wants to do. And then when there's downtime, there's commercials playing, he's having to deal with internal conflicts, and he hates this, right? Because he's never had to do this. He's never had to really deal with humans at this level. So here we have the conflict, and now we go back, or we have the internal conflict, and then he finds more Noxians, and he leaps into action, starts popping them off, but he actually encounters some more strong, and not only strong, curious blood mages, and they're able to subdue him in some manner, and overwhelm him until after one of the Noxians kind of starts talking shit, and he brings up, "Oh, I haven't seen a Darken before, or I've heard about these things, these kind. I wonder if there's more of them." And this pisses Varys off, gives him a second wind, brings him back to the senses, and then he pops back into action and knocks all these guys off again. Besides one Noxian starts running away, and it's a bit of a distraction because the spirits are getting involved again, right? Because remember, it's dying down, action's dying down. They have time to kind of play the moral game.
And like this is where, as far as like the artistic style for the comic actually starts kind of playing into its favor, because once we get to the point where, you know, there's this one last Noxian, and like this is like Varus starts setting it up to be like the final moment for the mortals, right? It's like,
Yeah.
hey, Val, strike this Noxian down, and then, you know, you'll be free, right? Like like the two of you will be free. And Val and Kai, you know, they end up within the prison of Varus. They end up being able to at this point reconnect with each other. And so this is where like the artistic style really kind of plays into its favor, because it's going back and forth from just these really bright red colors thanks to the blood magic as well as just dead Noxians,
Yeah.
and then going to like a lot of these, you know, more like dark mixed with light purple colors to show Kai and Val reaching each other again. And this is the it's very important that we get that highlight there, because the more that they stand together, the more that they're able to kind of keep Varus in check. And
2v1,
that,
baby.
yeah, 2v1. And so as far as with them reconnecting, you know, it's like, hey, no, we're not going to give into the vengeance. We're not going to give into that. You know what? You know what? It's time to go home. It's time to go home. And as far as with them not having a physical form, or like, you know, the three of them having one physical form, what the hell is home, right? Like then, and that is kind of like where we start leading into our epilogue, is now it's like, now that they're able to kind of take their own foothold to where they're not going to get completely consumed by Varus, they now got to figure out what the hell home means to them now. Like, does home mean breaking free? Does home mean getting rid of Varus? Who knows? Who knows?
Yeah, it's that moment where I think this is the one of the narrative narrative things that's really interesting is because essentially since Varys has come out of the well, he's been on a hot streak, right? To maintain his control, and he's been very confident. It's very fresh though, right? He just got the body. So when they have this situation where, killing Noxians is his way of keeping Val in check, when they encounter somebody who's not a soldier, just a Noxian who's there and he's like an artist or whatever, Val starts to question things and that allows Kai to get back in. And then you get the 2v1 situation, which throws Varys off. And then there's no conflict for him to get back in the mojo, right? And it's like, oh, fuck. Now they're gaining control. And this is when we get to the scene where you actually have, which we saw it being represented in the same way in the music video, where Kai and Val are reaching out to each other. And when they finally are able to touch, then Varys loses his ability and gets suppressed. And then they begin to return home. You can see it with the colors as well, where they become more peaceful pastels. You get lighter blues, pinks, yellows, instead of these harsh red, purples, etc. Yep. And as he returns home, his mother's waiting. She's obviously skeptical because he just left. Like this is all happening very quickly.
The pacing of this was hey, what's up? I'm gonna kill some Noxians. Where's my son? I am Varus. And then go off, kill a bunch of Noxians. So, you could just imagine that they're just watching this monster walk away. They're hearing the screams and dying of, dozens of people. And then here comes the monster again. And it's like, no, it's me this time, Mom. That's the pacing. That's the pacing that we've got here. And, but, again, this is where, even though I'm not a fan of the art style, this is where the art style really plays into the scene, because with the return home, all of the other people outside of Mom are also brighter and more defined. The town looks brighter and more defined. And it's because we're looking at it through Val and Kai's eyes and not through Varys's eyes, where Varys is just looking at everybody like, your mortals are just ants to me. I don't care.
Yeah. And when they come back, and it's not a moment, I know it's called Retribution, but this is the beginning of that process, because what the two spirits are now saying to the mother is, we know we can't truly come in. We can't come home. We can't stay here. But the world's a wide, big place, and there has to be a solution out there. So they're going to search for that and hopefully figure out a way to completely suppress Varys in the process, because they need Varys because that's the body. And that's a pretty neat take on it. So they decide they're going to leave Palace, and we get a quote here at the end that says, "We are 3 in 1, the one of 3. We are the arrow of retribution. We are Varus." And that's why, towards the end of this, we were saying they, right? Instead of specifically who, because saying just Varys kind of feels wrong because we associate that with the dark side, the darkened part of this being, but it is 3 people. So them claiming Varys and saying we all are Varys, and we have to understand how to balance that so that we're not inflicting pain, is the goal. And that's a pretty cool way to end this and where this will take us in the future.
Yeah, and it's also cool because we're getting to see the prophecy that the seer of the Temple of Palace passed on to Kai and Val, well, specifically to Val, because it was like, no, your spirits will become one, and their spirits became one. They just weren't aware that they were, into an open relationship. And then they were in it. It was too late by the time they got into it, when they both looked at each other and went, you know what? I don't want an open relationship.
Yeah, this is a unique polycule.
Very unique molecule.
But with that, I mean, we know this was probably one of the more complicated episodes, and that's kind of why we wanted to spread it out over these multiple episodes, kind of talk about it more than just one episode, so that hopefully at this point you're an expert in the being that is Varys.
Yes.
So we'll continue with one more episode after this, where we talk about one more situation that happens, and then we'll leave it at that. But for now, thanks for listening, and we'll be back soon with the next episode.
Take care, everybody.